The thing to keep in mind is that the Solana Foundation does not run Solana, right? Solana is an open source blockchain that no one controls. And so to get involved in the ecosystem, you don't have to ask anybody. You can just do it.
I've got an idea, or myself and my mates have got an idea. We submit kind of an application and we put down some milestones, and then you review the application, and based on the milestone, you are going to give a certain amount of capital. And as you hit the milestone, the money can grow as well. You can bring in partners or strategic investors to grow the project. I hope to see you at Plan B Forum in Lugano. Use the code FOX10 for 10% discount on your ticket. Welcome on the Financial Fox Show. I'm Steffi, and I will be joined today by Andrea Baglioni, Head of Grants and Capital at Solana Foundation. But before we get into the interviews, just a couple of things. Firstly, if you are watching our interview but you are not yet part of our community, please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow Financial Fox on social media. You will find the links in the description. The bigger our community grows, the bigger Financial Fox gets, and the more prominent guests I can invite to add maximum value to you, whether you are an investor, founder, of crypto enthusiast. Second, please remember that the content on the show is for informational purposes only and not intended as financial advice. Any opinion shared by me or my guests are ours alone, and you should not act solely on the back of them. As always, do your own research, level up your skills, and be accountable for your decision. With that being said, let's get to the interview. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fantastic. So great to have you on the show.
Yeah, very excited to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is going to be actually our first video discussing Solana. So I'm really excited to bring this topic to our investor and all our audience as well. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into crypto?
I actually started learning about crypto in college in a couple classes, but then graduated and moved to San Francisco and decided to work in tech. This was about 10 years ago. I had a close friend of mine who started with me at this company called Square, and he and I talked a lot every lunch about, he would bring topics about crypto, I would bring topics about politics, we would chat. His topics were more interesting, so we just deep dived into crypto, and that started my journey from a learning perspective. About 3.5 years ago, that same friend had joined the crypto world full-time and needed some help. He was at Solana and needed some help running hackathons and just general support. And it was the right time in my life to consider sort of jumping into this space that I'd had an interest in for a long time. So it was sort of a deep interest from a long time ago, combined with, the right push at the right time that got me working at Solana.
Wow, fantastic. So an Italian in San Francisco, now head of grants and capital at Solana Foundation. Wow.
Yeah, it's wild. I grew up in a very small village in the Dolomites and never thought I would be, as you put it pretty well, in San Francisco doing this, sort of helping people across the world understand Solana. So
yeah, super exciting. And listen, we have a lot of young investors. They are looking at crypto. They are thinking about the space, how they can get exposure, for example, and why these young investors looking at crypto should be interested in Solana.
yeah, maybe just as a really high overview, Solana is a layer one blockchain, kind of like Ethereum, kind of like Bitcoin, except it is super scalable, really fast, and really cheap. So what that means in practice is that, first of all, the community is very large. When you are a part of the Solana community, you can learn, access, build with projects of all different varieties, right? Solana is a general purpose blockchain. It is also where a lot of the sort of cultural happenings in blockchain go on, because it's so accessible. So if you think about, for example, meme coins, a lot of those happened on Solana because of the reasons we just talked about. And There are also a lot of programs, whether you are a builder, an investor, someone who's just curious, that make it really easy for you to learn and participate in the Solana community. There are tons of hackathons, there are tons of educational boot camps, there are hacker houses around the world that you can go to. So I think it's a really nice intro, nice accessible sort of introduction to the world of scalable blockchain.
Financial Fox is proud to partner with Hive Digital Technology, a public listed company focused on building the next generation data center infrastructure using only renewable energy. Hive was the first crypto miner to go public and the first one to have an AI strategy. With operations in Canada, Sweden, Iceland, and now Paraguay, Hive is a leader in efficient Bitcoin mining with the best hash rate realization in the industry. Finally, and most importantly, Hive cares about its shareholders. That's why its strategy is low dilution, low G&A, and focus on cash flow. If you don't know Hive, check them out at hivedigitaltechnology.com. So basically what you are saying is that your goal is really to make crypto mainstream. Yeah, and kind of like try to onboard as many users as possible, giving them kind of like a user experience or an interface that is super easy. They don't have to be obviously tech pro to get in the door.
That's exactly right. I think so. The original vision for Solana was for it to effectively build NASDAQ, right? Like replace the financial systems of the world on blockchain. And in order to do that, the technology that was developed made it really fast and really cheap because you're comparing against like Web2 technologies that are usually very fast and usually free. And so that is the sort of fundamentals of Solana. What it has expanded into now, because of those things, like you said, is a blockchain that makes it really easy, really fun, and really accessible for new people to learn about, Solana, about blockchain generally, and to build applications that could, in theory, change the world.
And I think, on the top of that, and I know lots of our viewers are also investors in the space, so they are looking where actually we should put money to kind of like make it 2, 3, 4x. And I think it's something important to say. And myself, I was actually quite surprised because, to be honest, I got in Solana actually not too long ago. So I was an early investor in Bitcoin in 2017. Then obviously you discover Ethereum, just straight after. But I wasn't in Solana at the beginning. And when I saw the collapse following FTX, I wasn't worried because I wasn't in, but I said, those guys are never going to come back. But actually, the ecosystem and the community and the project has shown a really amazing resilience. And you were what, like $10 at some point, $8? And now, trading over 100. And, that was a big hit. That was something, I'm not sure how many projects would have made a comeback.
Yeah, I think, the reality is that the team behind FTX liked Solana for a number of reasons, but primarily it was because the technology was super good, like we've talked about, and the community was very strong. And those things are true independent of whatever FTX did, right? So when FTX collapsed, there was this narrative that Solana is effectively the FTX coin. It's the FTX ecosystem. That wasn't actually true, but that was the narrative. And so the things that made Solana attractive to FTX were and remain true today, right? Incredible technology, really strong community. And so those things never went away. And so we've seen builders, we've seen, investors, we've seen all types of people sort of realize that. There was for sure, like you mentioned, a moment where people were scared. They were like, is Solana going to be able to survive that? But from our perspective, it was never in doubt because those fundamental components were always there, and sort of took a dip for sure, but the community is thriving again today.
And you never stop building, and that's where we are gonna go straight into what you do. you are managing the grant and ecosystem development, and I think that's like really important for developing the ecosystem, to actually getting more and more founders to actually build on Solana. So I would like to understand a little bit better, and not just me, but also all our listeners. There might be founders as well. They are looking to get involved in crypto, and they say, where should we go? Which blockchain should we choose? And why actually we should go on Solana? Then maybe think it's just meme coin. But yeah, tell us where the grants come from, the process, and then we can see perhaps how do you allocate funds. But let's start from the beginning.
Again, maybe higher level. Solana's general purpose. So we see applications across all categories, right? We see projects that are, two people with an idea. Maybe we'll start with a hackathon and they'll build it out from there. And we see institutions like Visa, PayPal, Stripe, right? And basically everything in between, all leveraging Solana's like core technology, again, super fast and super cheap, to build out things that wouldn't be possible to build elsewhere. So our job on the capital team is to effectively accelerate this process, right? Is to help builders who might otherwise not take the risk have the sort of safety net to do so. And so we do grants. We actually fund teams in a number of ways, and we help teams get funded even if it's not from us. But that maybe answered your question on the grants specifically. Yeah, we give grants that are milestone based. So that means that we'll give you a little bit of money up front and then a little bit of money every time you hit one of the goals that we agree to. And we give grants across every single vertical. The most popular right now, for what it's worth, are probably games, payments, and DePIN, right? So these are categories that more than most, I think, create this or sort of require the speed and cost efficiency that Solana offers compared to other blockchains. And so we see categories, again, we see projects from across the whole board. We roughly see about 400 applications come in a month. And so there's a ton of interest in Solana. We try to fund the projects we can. We try to make sure that all the good projects get funded somehow, even if it's not from us. So that's what I do. That's what I spend my days thinking about.
So kind of like a recap. So we have, I've got an idea, or myself and my mates have got an idea. We submit kind of an application and we put down some milestones, and then you review the application, and based on the milestone, you are going to give a certain amount of capital. And as you hit the milestone, the money can grow as well. You can bring in partners or strategic investors to grow the project.
Yeah, I think that's right. I would actually say there are three primary sources of funding in the Solana ecosystem. And maybe I'll start with how people normally get introduced to the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's actually our global hackathons. So these are hackathons that have thousands of participants across every category. It's really a good opportunity for people who want to try something, right? They work on it for a couple of weeks, they submit it, there's tons of prizes. A lot of investors pay attention. And so it's really a good opportunity to get exposure and funding to get started. Those run a couple times a year, and it's run by a company called Coliseum, and they're excellent at what they do. So that's one. The second one is actually, there are a bunch of teams around the world, not part of the Solana Foundation, but they're called super teams. There's actually a super team in the UK based in London. And these guys are really sort of a community first organization and focus on, again, sort of like the hackathons, the 0 to 1. So they really care and help small projects get started and get introduced to the ecosystem, make the right connections, get access to funding. Usually those grants are much faster than the grants that we can give, but they're also a little smaller. And then the third entity is sort of the Solana Foundation. That's where I work. And we give grants that are a little larger. The application process is a little longer, but it's quite straightforward. All you do is you go to solana.org/grants, and the application process is right there. All those applications are reviewed by my team, every single one. And I know that because people sometimes submit applications that are, someone asked for money to like renovate their house. We said no to that one. But it's just evidence of the fact that we read every single application. And there's a team of experts that will take that application, give context into how this project can work within the ecosystem, and help formulate those milestones. So maybe to comment on what you said earlier, you do submit your application, but it doesn't have to be perfect. If the idea is good, if the team is good, we'll have a conversation with you to make sure that we can turn it into something that is good for the ecosystem and that we can fund.
It's super interesting that you mentioned the Solana super teams, and I was not thinking about asking you that, but I think it's quite interesting also for our listeners and overall, anybody that is tuning in, to actually understand how you have managed to grow the community and decentralize it in a way that is quite interesting, because these kind of super teams, as you said, they act more like a connector, more like a hub, like trying to help you with partnership advice and stuff like that. And I've been invited a few times to the co-working space as well, which are quite impressive.
Yeah, I'll say Super Team is a very impressive organization. They have multiple different teams around the world. So different teams have slightly different focuses depending on where they are, right? So the Super Team in Dubai might be more focused on capital markets, while the Super Team in Vietnam might be focused more on like developers, right? So each has their own flair. They are, a team that basically started off in India with a couple people and really executed phenomenally. And so that's the sort of project that we will support in the long run because, as you said, it helps decentralize the community. They're also fantastic at bringing on new projects, really making people feel involved in the blockchain world instead of just having them sit behind a computer, basically. I'll say the Super Team is one of the efforts. The thing to keep in mind is that the Solana Foundation does not run Solana, right? Solana is an open source blockchain that no one controls. And so to get involved in the ecosystem, you don't have to ask anybody. You can just do it. But there are projects, there are teams around the world that do make it easier for people to do that. Yeah. Super Team is a good example. The hackathon's another good example. And so there are things like that we love seeing.
It's so important, like in Web3 and in crypto, to have partnerships. I mean, the partnerships can make or break a deal. So having people that are able actually to connect with other great projects in the same ecosystem could be really valuable. So you mentioned about the areas of focus being payments, being deepen, and also being gaming. So let's say that because we are entering kind of like the bull market, right? Or hopefully, hopefully we are on the way up. And where do you see Solana, let's say, in a year time?
It's really hard to predict where anything in this space will be 2 weeks from now, never mind a year from now. But if we're if we're imagining where Solana will be in a year from now, I think this general purpose sort of expansion, I think, will continue. So on the one end of the spectrum, you'll see really large institutions. Again, we talked about Visa and Stripe and PayPal, but there's a lot of other banks, a lot of other large tech companies, a lot of companies really from all different parts of like any industry that are thinking about how they can use Solana to improve their business, right? So I think you'll have a layer of enterprise, large companies really start using Solana for what they do day to day, including banks. And then you'll see sort of a really strong community aspect on the other end, right? So we saw meme coins be a catalyst for adoption, be a catalyst for conversation over the past year. And I think that will continue, but I also think we're going to see people get more involved in games. There's a couple really promising payments companies actually from the UK that will make it really easy for people to use like stable coins on Solana to transact across borders instantly and basically for free, right? And so you'll have a bottoms up approach as well. I'll say, we talked about this a little bit, but our goal is to bring on the next billion users into blockchain. And I think basically a lot of the real world use cases, right? Things that you will actually use day to day will start emerging on Solana a lot more and become more popular. And so that's how we'll get to the next billion.
Amazing. And hopefully the price will keep increasing. Yeah. We don't know where it will go, but obviously, definitely having more development, also the price will appreciate as well. Let's move on. Something else quite interesting because you are actually the first crypto project that has focused on mobile and
Yeah.
try to leverage this kind of like technology that actually exists, and maybe they are Web 2 technology, but there is mass adoption there. So why the Solana phone? Why people should consider buying the Solana phone, and what is your strategy, your mobile strategy?
Yeah, it's a good question. This sort of stems from our philosophy that one of the reasons why there aren't a billion users on crypto yet is because the user experience is actually quite bad. It's improved a lot over the last couple of years, but it is really hard. The classic example, it's really hard to tell your mother, hey, this is how you download a wallet and you store your seed phrases and do all that sort of stuff, right? And so a billion people aren't going to be users of crypto if that problem doesn't get fixed. And so actually a general emphasis of ours this year has been improving that experience. And so you did see like mobile is part of that strategy, right? Everybody has a mobile phone. Everybody sort of interacts with applications in a way that, is familiar to them, right? And so being able to bring the crypto experience to a platform that people are familiar with will, one, force projects to think more about the user experience, right? Because of the limitations of the phone itself, because of the like types of users that are going to be using that phone. And two, just really puts sort of crypto in a place that people would be looking anyway, right? Which is their mobile phone. People aren't necessarily going to be going and looking up even popular websites like pump.fun or Jupiter, right? But if there's an application that they can download, that's something they're much more familiar with. So that is one piece of it. The other piece of it is, just making sure that no matter where users are, whether it is on a phone, but also on the internet, right, on Twitter, for example, that experience can be an interface for blockchain and the user. That's why we launched blinks and actions that allow you to place a crypto transaction like on your Twitter feed. And so this whole thing is about like from a general perspective, really bringing crypto to where the user is instead of forcing the user to go where crypto is. Blinks and actions are actually quite new. They were really, you can sort of say, officially launched just at Breakpoint, which was the Solana conference that happened in Singapore about 2 weeks ago. Now they have existed for a little bit longer than that, but the idea is effectively that generally the way crypto works now is that you have to go to a website, you have to connect your wallet, you have to then perform the action you wanted to do, right? Which is a little bit of a barrier, right? You're forcing people to leave where they were to go do something else. The idea of blinks and actions is to reverse that. So is to be able to embed effectively buttons and things like that on interfaces on any internet interface. So Twitter is probably the easiest example, right? So instead of like, let's take prediction markets. Polymarket is a very popular prediction market, not on Solana yet. But Polymarket is very popular, right? So people can go and bet on outcomes for events. The way that interaction happens now is that people have to leave wherever they are. They might see an interesting post on Twitter. They have to leave Twitter to go to Polymarket. In theory, with blinks and actions now, you can just have a tweet that in of itself contains the action. So it will unfurl and allow users to like place a bet, for example, directly from Twitter. It's a small change, but a quite fundamental one, which is, again, just very simply, instead of having the users leave and go to where crypto is, you bring crypto to where the users already are.
And tell me a bit about, why we have seen the rise of meme coin on Solana. And I'm saying that because meme coins has become a thing now. They are considered actually part of the future of finance because it's a different way to think about money with culture. So why do you think Solana has attracted that community?
Yeah, I think primarily two reasons. One, the community is super strong and the culture is very strong on Solana. And Secondly, the blockchain is very accessible and cheap and fast, which is what people are looking for, right? You don't want to have to spend $10 creating a meme coin when you can do it for effectively free. And so you combine a super strong culture that exists already, like a really large community. Like to give you some context, more transactions happen on Solana than all the L2s combined, right? So that's like the amount of scale and interaction that we see on Solana. And so that community existing, the fact that the technology is really accessible, cheap, fast, and also you have really good user interfaces like Phantom and things like that make it easy. And those two things come together to effectively kick off the meme coin mania, you might call it, that we saw over the last couple months. I will say we've seen a lot of enthusiasm over the last couple months, but actually meme coins have been a core part of the Solana sort of story for a long time. You can sort of think of it as, we talked about FTX previously. One of the things that brought the community back together after FTX was Bonk, which at the moment, like at the time, was really nothing more than a meme coin, but has really turned into a whole, team, community, like culture on Solana. And so I think people have also used examples from the past to try to do it again. So yeah.
And if we have to spend just a few minutes talking about security and talking about also network stability, because Solana is well known as being quite a centralized blockchain, and one of the backdrop of that is that the network can go down, and then you talk about mobile, which I do agree is the best way to get to people, but also includes question about identity, privacy. I know you are not the technical guru here, but I want to kind of like get inside your head and see how you think about those like challenges or question that I'm sure a tech company like yours is definitely giving some thoughts.
Obviously, security is paramount, right? Super important to the entire blockchain space. I'll say a couple different things. First of all, Solana has thousands of validators. It is actually very, very decentralized. There is a sort of misconception that the network is run by 6 people or whatever it is, or it has 75 developers. But those are more memes than anything else. If you actually look at the data for how decentralized Solana is, it is up there as like one of the most decentralized blockchain networks out there. So that's one piece. I think its Nakamoto coefficient, if you want to get a little more technical, is quite high, especially compared to any other blockchain out there. So that's one. I think the second point is, network outages were a thing for sure. Ideally, they're not, but Solana at that point was still brand new, right? And even now, it's still, it's an evolving blockchain, and so sometimes that will happen. The goal is to make sure that they happen as little as possible, and that when they do happen, they're fixed right away. And so we haven't had a network outage for a long time now, and even the last one was brought back in a couple of hours. I'll say there is a marketing narrative here as well, where like actually most blockchains have this problem. All the popular blockchains today go down or skip slots or do things like that. You just don't necessarily hear about it, in part because of this marketing narrative. So the engineers who have worked on Solana have done an incredible job over the last, year, a couple months, and we haven't seen any network outage. We don't expect to see any, I guess ever, but who knows? And so let's put it this way, it's a priority. It is probably the priority. And so there's that. And then on the like security and like privacy and things like that, Solana is as secure as private. You can sort of think of it as anything else. There's actually an interesting technology now called token extensions, which I'd recommend looking into, especially if you're a little more technical. But it effectively allows on Solana mainnet for things like private transactions. So if for whatever reason you're an institution or you want to build an application that requires some of these things, you can do it on mainnet without having to create an L2 specifically for that. So I think overall, all these things are very high priorities for us. But things have improved a lot, and I think we're in a very good spot.
And listen, you are based in San Francisco where all the AI innovation is happening. So, and AI is becoming like a key part of whatever is all this tech evolution, and now even with data center, even more. Are there any kind of like thoughts or anything you're working on that include AI or anything that Solana Foundation or your group has been looking into for what, kind of like intersection
Mhm.
between AI and crypto?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when AI first started becoming the buzzword in San Francisco, we launched a $10 million grants program for the intersection of AI and crypto. And so we've seen a lot of examples of, projects. You can sort of think of it as leveraging blockchain for AI or leveraging AI for blockchain. So we've seen a lot of those. I will say, when one of these sort of buzzy topics comes up, you see some good ideas and a lot of filler. And so we're still looking for those sort of killer use cases where this makes a lot of sense. Around authenticity, of work and things like that is probably one area that we're excited about. Haven't quite seen any breakthrough scenarios yet. Yeah, so we launched a program. We launched a grants program. There are lots of people submitting applications in that category, so we continue to see examples come up. And yeah, it's something we're paying close attention to. And if you have ideas, send them our way because we're very excited to look at them.
Fantastic. Andrea, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on the show and sharing
Yeah.
your story and everything that Solana is working on. I think it was really helpful, definitely for me, and I'm sure for all our listeners as well.
Yeah. I had a blast. Thank you so much for the thoughtful questions and for having me on the show.
Fantastic. So anybody that is interested in, reaching out, looking into the grants, I think you already said the link. We are going to put it into the description. Which is the best way to kind of like get in touch with the Solana team? Is like Twitter, is the website?
Yeah, if you're looking for funding, if you're trying to submit a grant application, we review everything, like I said. So solana.org/grants. We're very active on Twitter. My personal Twitter handle, I'm sure, will be on there somewhere as well. So any of those work. We're always open to hearing about cool ideas and people interested in the space.